So if we click on our World tab here, then we have access to our use of mist and stars. The first thing we need to know when using mist, to see it, you have to be in texture mode of viewport shading. It won't show up in solid. So if I click mist here, we see that it pops up here and we can already see the effects really good down on our camera. What this does is it gradients out the background of objects to a common color, which gives the effect of mist. If you'll notice that the effect is only happening on the objects themselves, so it's actually a shading effect. We're not actually getting any genuine kind of volume or anything like that outside of the objects, but it's still really useful, and especially in use with your background, because when you render it out it will all look consistent. For instance, if I were to change this from white to the blue skies, now that I've switched it over to blue skies, I need to check mist again. Then we can see down here how the mist is looking. So if we hit render, we see this really cool blurring of our background. So if I hit escape, click on the little arrow to see the rest of the controls. So the minimum here, that controls the minimum amount of mist no matter how close you are to the objects. As you see, the closer I zoom in on things, the less mist is used. So if we raise that all the way up to 1, that's like saying minimum is 100% of mist, no matter how close or far away we are to the object. This is your total amount of mist, no matter how close up. Generally keep that on 0. And notice too, there's a bit of a lag in between changing the controls and actually seeing the effect. If I move this up a couple notches, we don't see it immediately until we try to actually rotate in our scene there. So it's just a little bit of a lag. So I'll take that back down to 0. And with depth, we can control the extent of which the mist is close and far away from our objects. And then height we can also control vertically. So if I've got objects up here, we're controlling the distance from when it starts getting misty when moving up away from us. See, as it gets lighter as we move it down, and then more blue as we move it up there. And then of course the start is how close or far away the mist starts from us. The start and the depth, you can kind of find a happy medium in between there to kind of control your gradient of how smoothly you want the mist to kind of seep into your scene. So we'll just click render on that. And so we kind of get a feel of how that works. If we wanted an actual more genuine kind of mist, we would probably not use blue skies, but we would create another sky that looked more cloudy and murky. Or even if we just go back to white here, and you see, since I changed the overall world settings, it changes all our settings too, so we would have to mess with that. But if we click render here, just the white background kind of gives us more of an idea of, the use of mist itself. So I'm going to tap escape. Just remember with the mist that to be able to see it, we need to be in texture viewport shading, and also it doesn't actually generate any type of volume fog. It's just an effect basically on the shading of the objects, but still a rather effective one for a very cheap amount of, if you will, resources. So I'm going to go ahead and go to File, New, and Reload Startup File. Switch over to my World tab here. The latest version of Sensei Format 3 includes a default world settings of stars. If we click down here, so we're going to see these pop up wherever we're using the camera. So if we were to tap 0 here in our main 3D view, which pops us into the camera also, we can see them there. We've got your basic controls, size, and then minimum distance. As you can see, controls the distance from which they'll start, and we could kind of get a preview up here, but then we can also see it in the live view as well. If I start zooming away here, well, especially if I hit S and scale this cube up and I start zooming away here, the stars actually go over the object as though we were in a true 3D environment for these stars, which you would think would be really cool, because you would think you could do something like go to Material, click New, and then turn the mirror on for this material, turn the reflectivity up, and then render a scene, and then be able to see a reflection of those stars onto this cube here. But it doesn't seem to work that way, and I've looked and looked, but I can't seem to find a way to get this star field to behave as though it's actually corresponding to 3D space. The best kind of use you can get for it pretty much is just generating kind of a generic star field background. Of course, they will move around. It will look a little more interesting if you're animating. As you can see here, they do stick within a 3D space, but kind of a buzzkill that they don't show up on reflections. There's a lot of ways around this to where you can create star fields that do this with particles and things, but that's beyond the scope of this particular tutorial. Clearly these stars don't look that great, so let's switch back over to the world view. That is mostly because the size is huge on these, so we need to get these way down, maybe even increase the separation a little bit of the stars. Colors is interesting. I have this set up by default at about 0.2 or 0.3. Any more than that and they start turning your screen into a light bright basically, but just a little bit of color is really nice for some subtle lighting effects there. So hit render again, and those are obviously still way too huge. Let's bring those way down. Maybe increase the minimum distance here. That looks a little more realistic. Probably decrease the size even one more time. Okay, that's the basic star field. Pretty cool for simulations and things like that.